Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Live from the van down by the river.
Starring
Mike Murray.
This
Is
SNL.
SNL By The Numbers.
numbers.
What if I told you the learned boy shall conform? Domingo dazzles. There's the opening haiku for you. I am your host, Mike Murray, and this is SNL By The Numbers, the home of SNL stats. Tonight, we are covering episode 1005 of Saturday Night Live with host Colman Domingo and usual guest Anitta. This podcast is a presentation of LateNighter.com. Back with me. Sometimes she has her own haiku. I'm going to put her on the spot. Rebecca North. Welcome back to the desk of stats. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here. Congrats on the baby, Mike. Let's talk SNL.
Love it. That might have been the best haiku yet from Rebecca North. How you been? How you enjoying spring in New York?
It's great. It's 80 degrees today, but I'm in an apartment that does not turn the air conditioning on until May 31st. So I'm just like sitting really closely to a fan. So mind you if you hear that, but cooling down, but excited that it's finally, it jumps from like the middle of winter to summer here. So 80 degrees today, not complaining about that, but my apartment could not be hotter.
Do you have any windows?
I have a lot of windows, which is great, but I'm opening it and it's like hot air blowing in, and I live on a very loud street. So it's probably just best to like sit in my little sauna.
Fair enough. You know, the sounds of the city and the heat of the trash. Yeah, it's all good stuff coming through that window.
Exactly.
And across the border, John Schneider, how are you enjoying your spring? Good to see you again, buddy. Do you have a haiku for us?
I do not. I just found out a few weeks ago I am not good at haikus, so I gave it a
You
shot.
gave it
when
your
I hosted.
best shot, though. I was happy to hear the attempt.
How many syllables did I get to?
Actually, the math added up. It just was
It just sounded
wasn't
like
the
shit.
right form. Yeah, no, I think it wasn't bad. Just it's gonna be 575 going by the numbers. You know, you got to go by the numbers for haikus.
All right, well, I got it. One day we'll see in the future if I can ever pull that off. But seriously, happy to be here. And Rebecca, them only turning on your air conditioning on a specific date should be illegal.
Yeah, so right now it's like the same unit that's heater and AC. So, but I'm sure they made these rules like 50 years ago before global warming took. So it's like doesn't turn on till way too late and does not remain on long enough either, because now I feel like we get a lot more heat than we do cold air outside. So now it's just on the schedule, and my windows are not equipped for an AC, so I just got to sweat it out.
Wow. Pre-SNL New York rules. Hard to think of it.
Hope it's rent controlled.
It is actually.
All right, there we go. Okay. That was
Yeah. So I can't complain too much.
That'll do it.
All right, yeah. Let's start a GoFundMe for a ceiling fan install. All right. Anyway, so we're back. We had a really exciting episode of By the Numbers last week with Darren and Kirsten talking about Jack Black's 5-timer episode, full of cameos and just excitement. Of course, Jack Black brings The Rock, and with Jack White, that was not surprising at all. This week, no cameos, and we had a first-time host, first-time usual guest. Couldn't be more different SNLs finishing off this run before really seemingly like historic end of a season in 51, and we reacted to that as well. But I'd love to get Rebecca's reaction to Olivia Rodrigo double duty, Matt Damon, Noah Khan, and Will Ferrell, Sir Paul to wrap it all up.
I mean, talk about big names. We are closing out the season with some heavy hitters. I mean, I think Colman Domingo in general was shocked he has never hosted before. He's one of those people that I'm always like thinking should have been hosting, and he did such a good job. But we're ending with just 3 heavy hitters in May. I think Olivia Rodrigo double duty. We're been very much looking forward to her new album. She's coming on, and not only will be probably her first time, if not one of her first times performing her new music, but she's also hosting for the first time. And I think that's just a lot of pressure. But with her acting background, she did start as like a Disney girl. So I have high hopes that she'll be able to pull it off, but it just feels like what a big undertaking for your first time host and your first time live performing new music. That's always stressful. And then going through, it's just like Matt Damon, Noah Khan. I'm like the biggest Noah Khan fan, so I'm so excited to see that one. And I saw the stat that you guys posted that him and Olivia performed their last appearances on the show. It was Noah, and then the next week Olivia, and this time they're switching it up. So I feel like they are friends and they've performed a lot live together. So it'd be fun to see some crossover there. And then we're ending the season with all these rumors that this could be like, Bowen's last episode was Ariana and Cher. It wouldn't be the craziest thing for Paul McCartney and Will to be Lauren's last episode. I think it's probably the strongest finale lineup that we've seen just about ever. So we're really closing out with 3 very exciting hosts. But that last episode, I mean, like, that's just iconic in every sense of the word.
I'm glad you brought that up, because before we dive into Colman and Anitta, I want to go over to John and talk about this because of the Lauren documentary that's making headlines right now, and I believe you have an interview to plug about that. So speculation on after 50, and we had great documentaries leading up to it. We had the SNL 50th concert, and of course the celebration on February 16th, which was just checking every box and seeing everybody come back. A big season. And now, there was the Lauren book that came out. Now we have this documentary, and it seems like they're really firing every bullet left in the chamber for like retrospectives and this type of look back. So what is your take on that? And do you think that there's more fuel to that fire of that rumor than there's ever been to this point?
I think there's slightly less fire than there was a year ago, where it sort of made sense that he could ride off into the sunset after the 50th. But had this lineup been there for the end of the 50th, the Will Ferrell, Paul McCartney, I think everyone would have been thinking the same thing that we're thinking now. Like, there is a small possibility this could be it. I do think that it's a huge question.
You're muted, Mike, but it's not me this time.
Did we lose John? John, if you can hear us, hop out and come back in. But Rebecca, you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you, Mike.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, John is saying that there's less fire to that rumor because it's 51 and not 50. But I can imagine that if there was a succession plan.
I hope this is gonna.
Oh, John is a little bit back. Well, he'll figure it out. But if there was a succession plan for after, you wouldn't want to do it after 50, I feel like.
I was going to say the same thing. I kind of feel like, I don't know, we thought there was going to be some crazy big cast, like shake up coming after 50, but that was not the case. So that does lead me to believe that they wanted to end a legendary season and not rattle everything too much. It's like we're coming off the high of 50, and I feel like there was such high, there was such good, there was the movie, there was the 50th special, the music special, a really just like strong season, and we expected such a switch up and we didn't see it. I think it's because they didn't want to do too much. We're probably getting a lot more people back after 50 that are just like reignited in the spirit of SNL, that now they're like, wait, I've been missing this, I'm going to tune back in. So 51, we wouldn't want to flip everything on its head right away. So I am agreeing with you. Like, I get John's point that there was more of a chance last season, like end on the even number there, but like, I don't know. I think that there's a big possibility, and they just want to like see the season through and make sure everything was still going strong, and it's going stronger than I think 50 was even going.
Right. I imagine you want like a softer landing after the biggest season of all time, to have someone take the reins and be like, all right, you up for the next 50? John, do we have you back?
Do you have me now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if the Lauren ghost got me, but I think that honestly, to sum up what I was saying is that when we spoke to Morgan Neville, who you'll hear this interview tomorrow night if you're checking out our channel, he said that he doesn't think there's an exact succession plan in place, that he thinks that eventually it could be, a couple people that take the reins at some point. point, and we're not really sure exactly when it is. So it's a lot of the same fodder that we've spoken about before. I have a theory myself, which is that I think that Lorne is thinking about his legacy beyond just the 50 years of the show that we celebrated last year. And I think that's part of the reason why we got SNL UK this year, because Lorne is thinking about how to leave a global footprint on Saturday Night Live, where he was really focused on how do I make this America's biggest show, and could Saturday Night Live eventually be, Britain's biggest show and Australia's biggest show. Like, those are the types of things that I think he's thinking about for the future. So I would imagine he probably has a few more years in him to just, fire some other bullets, to use your analogy.
Yeah, and especially with cast changes and trying to build a new era of the show, it seems like there's never a good time to leave SNL behind because there's always changes happening. But let's look at how the current cast did this week. John, take it away.
Yeah, very excited to talk about the screen time from season 51, episode 7. So how about that screen time from Colman Domingo? 8 sketches and 24 minutes of screen time throughout the night. A very dominant voice in this episode, so I can't wait to hear what Mike and Rebecca thought of his performance throughout the night. And then how about this, Mike? The leading cast screen time getter, Marcelo Hernandez, pulled off something that you have never seen before. Why don't you tell everybody what it is?
Yeah, I was pretty blown away by this. Whenever I see a number like this, I've mentioned before, Jason Sudeikis hosting in 47 and going back, like, did I type a number wrong? Is there some error in the math? There wasn't. It was Marcelo Hernandez with 16 minutes, 5 seconds. It's the highest cast member screen time I've ever recorded in my SNL stat career. So just blown away by this episode for Marcelo. He has more screen time than like a decent list of hosts that I've done stats for.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable because I don't know that I realized that, like, when I was talking about it on Saturday or Monday. I guess he was on screen for an extremely long time, which means a lot. Clearly, they feel very good about where he's at. So we'll talk about that for sure. But, I walked away thinking, okay, 6 appearances, solid night from Marcelo. But wow, this is just an incredible number. Not sure that this is the highest of all time. We still have many years of records that Mike and I are working to go back and look through. But at least for now, in modern day times, this is the current cast record for any episode of screen time. And it is just an incredible night for him. So great stuff from Marcelo.
Yeah, John, I want to jump in with a couple of these hosts because, we'll call it the SNL stat era, which can always expand as the universe does. But 16 minutes, 5 seconds. We look at cast screen time and say like 4 or 5 minutes is a solid night. This is triple that. So looking at some hosts that we might remember in the SNL stat era is like Simu Liu in 47, Paul Rudd, Rachel Brosnahan, Gene Smart, an Adam Driver episode, another Paul Rudd episode, of course, because of the COVID episode, Claire Foy, Issa Rae, Chris Rock, Don Cheadle, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Chalamet's first one, Tiana Taylor from earlier this year, Elon Musk, Willem Dafoe, Jonah Hill, Michael Keaton, Jonathan Majors, Sandra Oh, and he's right with Josh O'Connor was this season. So think about a host being in every sketch about. That's where Marcelo was with 16 minutes, 5 seconds. So I just want to shout that out because it's not too often we get one that's over 12 minutes, and this was over 16.
I mean, also just like to the point where, yes, if we're looking at earlier seasons, I'm sure we saw like in much less saturated casts without as many members. I'm sure if you go back, there will be a lot of people that might be hitting this mark, like in the first few seasons, in the first 20 years of the show. But like in recent, that's a lot. And no shade to Marcelo, but I kind of did not think he was like super memorable this episode for someone that clearly dominated the whole thing. Like I did not look back and say, oh, Marcelo had like a great night tonight. So that's even crazier to me, the stat that like he didn't stick out. And then this season we look at Ashley's consistently been on the top of the board, and it feels like more episodes than not we're saying, oh, this was Ashley's night. She did such a good job. I don't think that's like that didn't resonate with me with Marcelo, but now I want to go back and rewatch and just maybe I missed it, but also I think Colman was so good and was such a lead in all this in a lot of the sketches, and he was super dominant that like most of my attention went to him rather than a lot of the cast members. But just even looking here, it kind of feels like this is the 4th to last episode, or I guess 3rd to last. It's almost the end of the season. And it seems like a lot of the people that might not have been getting a ton of screen time and might not have been performing as well, where like there were some rumors to be like, are they going to leave the show? Or is that, and I know Marcelo has not had the season he's had in past seasons. We're looking, I mean, Colin, I don't know if he's just like bored of just sitting at the update desk and was like, ooh, I want to play and like be in the sketches. But having him at the top of this leaderboard is really crazy also. And he was more of a standout to me than Marcelo was in the episode. We're seeing Cam Patterson and Jane at the top. Like, if you asked us within the first 5 episodes of this season, who would be up there or who would be in last, we would probably have guessed Jane and Cam. So it's just kind of, I don't know. I feel like the season's doing a good job, Ashley aside, of load balancing. And like people are really strong nights and people that we didn't see as strong in the first half of the season, like Jane, are really performing now. So it's maybe like we're giving them a fair shot, or I don't exactly know what's happening, but it's very interesting. I feel like most seasons there's a ton of dominant people and they are dominant throughout. But Ashley aside, we're not really seeing other trends the way that we would in the past.
Yeah, a lot of career highs in this night. So, John, let's finish out everybody's data from the week.
Do you want me to go back to Marcelo later and finish the data, or would you prefer me to continue talking about Marcelo? Because I have a couple other things on this.
Yeah, let's talk about Marcelo. This is a record-breaking week.
Yeah, so I find this so fascinating because I just want to recap Marcelo's night for those who may not remember. It's been a few days. So Marcelo was on camera a lot during the Fashion District robbery, which he was one of the students there. So he's not the star of that sketch by any means.
Almost
Then
4.5 minutes.
4.5 minutes, which is great because he's on screen the entire time. But it's really Colman Domingo and Ashley sort of two-handed where they're going back and forth and the students are just filling in. Then the Artemis 2 video logs, which it's sort of, you have Colman, Marcelo, and Mikey that are taking a fair share, and he's coming in and out. And I would say that's a pretty fairly large role for him, but it's not in his voice particularly. It's just something that I think about.
A minute 49 right there.
Yeah, and then we got obviously him on Weekend Update, which he had with Cam. So you're going to rack up Weekend Update screen time.
Yeah, really long update feature too. 4:14. That one.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
That's a long update feature.
We get a parade sketch where he's sort of an anchor of a parade sketch because the entire parade has to go in front of him during Grandpa's wake, where him and Jeremy are playing brother.
Yep, 3:18 in that one.
Yeah, and then Boys Academy Prep School, where he's one of the boys. So that's, again, a lot of the guys in the cast are getting some time there, but him especially on a huge night.
Yep. So you got a little over 90 seconds in that one, and then the 10-1 Beastamorphs.
Beastamorphs. So all of that adds
accident
up. Too. Yeah, exactly. So I find it really interesting. And the reason I find it the most interesting is because if you were to tell me, and this is something we talked about earlier in the season with Marcelo and Bowen, who are sort of like two sides of the same coin, which was that when he would be on screen for most of his career, he is the focus because he is full of energy. He's loud. He will do stuff in accents. A Marcelo sketch, you know it when you see it. You're telling me that Marcelo was in 6 sketches in the night, 16 minutes of screen time, and I didn't walk away on Saturday night at the Hot Take Show saying, oh my God, that Marcelo sketch. That is the greatest thing I could have ever asked for from him as a performer. I would love him to establish himself and grow as a cast member in this way where he can continue to have supporting roles and not just completely monopolize the screen so that other performers don't have those moments alongside him. I'm okay with the odd Marcelo Hernandez character and sketch, and that's totally fine. I don't think that he's the type of performer that can dominate the screen week to week by making this the Marcelo Hernandez show, but it goes to show you that he has a lot of other qualities that maybe we don't always give him credit for. And this, to me, without having a big Domingo-like moment or any of the other sketches that we talked about, the immigrant dad talk show, any of that, this to me could be his greatest episode as a cast member.
And it couldn't have come at a better time. I'm so glad you framed it that way about the appearances because I want to do that rundown because I remember looking at it this morning and being like, is this right? Like, I'm announcing this record after I'm getting towards 200 episodes of data. And is this really that much more than like the best Kate I've done or the best Keenan I've done? And yeah, I had the same thought, John, which is, like, of course, it's sketch selection and camera work and that stuff. And it really brought me back to what inspired to make like the power ranking algorithm is because it's rewarding different aspects of the show. And Marcelo's been a cast member who does shine really brightly in one thing. And maybe he'll get the MVP votes for Monday's show because he did the Maniscalco or he did the Immigrant Dad talk show. And I like that Marcelo because it's, it's one thing to showcase him, but it's very limiting. Where we talk about Sarah Sherman, James Austin Johnson, even a little bit Dismukes last season of taking the backseat, but just doing like solid sketch work that a Keenan or Mikey does every single week. And this was it. And it just happened to be to add up to be his best night on the stat sheet without having 3-4 A rolls in the night.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I don't think it would be an episode of Saturday Night Network if I did not talk about Sarah and her ability to be the crazy, kooky, take the main focus away. But I'd say in the last season and a half, probably, she has taken that backseat role and has proven her longevity or potential longevity on the show. Because, yes, you see Sarah and you see the kookiness and you see what you're going to see from the ambient or the amphibian sketch, the 10-1 that we saw. Like, that was such a Sarah performance where she is the oddball and she is the main focus. And in her first 2 seasons on the show, that's a lot of what she was doing, was the gore, was her update characters. But then I'll have come on here and talked about how much I'm just obsessed with her because she's really proven herself as she could just be the straight girl. She could be just in the back and not pull all the attention. And Marcelo it's made me worried about his longevity because I think in terms of just the culture now, he's a standout on the show. He has made his mark in pop culture. Yes, Domingo was very pop culture focused, but at the same time, it's no coincidence that it was Marcelo focused. And he's rumored to be dating people and like all of that. And I was worried about his potential on the show because he could only do Marcelo. And I was laughing, John, because when you're like, oh, and his accents work, I'm like, his accent work. He could do one big character, and we see it a lot. But tonight proved, I think, that he has the potential, but is it too late in the season? I don't know.
Well, there's one other thing that I want to say about Marcelo and this modern day record, because again, we're not exactly sure where in the 51 years this falls, but at least for the last 10 years, potentially, this is the record of what we've seen for a cast member, is that there is something in professional sports, if you're a sports fan, when you watch a game, or maybe you're not watching and you hear on social media that there's some sort of record about to be broken and someone's doing something that you've never seen before or never heard to be done before, that is intriguing enough to turn on the screen. And that happened earlier this year. I think, Mike, we spoke about this, where there is a very good basketball player on the Miami Heat who's not an all-time great player, but he's like an all-star, and he scored 83 points, which is the second most amount of points in NBA history. And when that was happening, this is something that nobody could fathom that he would ever get to, that him specifically, and that this record would be close to being broken. The record is actually like 100 points from years ago that most people don't have footage of, but still in a modern day record that he got there. And this just happened just a few months ago. So a lot of basketball fans and a lot of non-basketball fans were interested in this moment. Part of me wishes that we could have known on Saturday that Marcelo was headed towards this record. It's hard to do. It's a different thing when Mike is, calculating screen time. You can actually have a stopwatch on screen. It's a different way to watch the show. But I think that's what's so great about Saturday Night Live, is that there are multiple ways to watch the show and that we can enjoy it in two senses. You can watch the entire night on Saturday and be like, all right, did I enjoy that sketch? Was that funny for me? Did it work for me? And did I like the way that they put the sketch together? You can ask yourself all those questions. And now you can go back and rewatch the episode and have an idea of what the data is and be like, wow, this is an incredible night for Marcelo as you go back and go through it. And I think that that is what makes SNL so special, Mike, is that there are really multiple ways we can look at an episode and analyze it. And that to me is why it's the greatest show on television.
I love takes like this, John. They just always fill me with the warm and fuzzies talking about stats and SNL history, because it is a whole other way of looking at the show that is the reason this podcast exists. And having that hindsight, I guess, if you rewatch this episode, and from the first time you see Marcelo till he runs out after shitting his pants in the 10-1 Beastamorph sketch, you can be like, wow, we just witnessed history right there. So the previous record that I had was season 45, episode 5. We had a Kate McKinnon episode with 15:29. So Kate McKinnon's was a record that I did have, and that was under 16 minutes, and this is 16:05 for Marcelo. So congrats, Marcelo, honestly.
Yeah, seriously incredible stuff. Can't wait to see if one day we can find someone who has more screen time than Marcelo, but for now you hold that record, big guy. So good job, Marcelo. Let's continue with the screen time for the rest of the night. And Marcelo's night shouldn't take away from Ashley Padilla's night, who was only in 3 sketches. She's been averaging somewhere, 3, 4, 5 a night, but still 10 minutes and 20 seconds of screen time. So clearly very dominant throughout her night, as well as you mentioned, Rebecca, Colin Jost all over this episode. 3 sketches for him, the second time in his career that he got to 3 segments, 9 minutes and 5 seconds for him. him. Jane and Cam, big question marks, but clearly are putting towards having a great second half of this season with 7 minutes each for both of them. 7:43 for Jane, 7:32 for Cam. James Austin Johnson, 3 segments and a large chunk in the cold open at 5:54. Anitta, the musical guest, 5:42 for her. Che on update, 5:23. Jeremy Colhane, 5 segments, 5-minute flat for him. Chloe Feynman, 4:59 there, so very close to that 5-minute mark. Tommy Brennan, 4 segments. A good night for him, 4:25. Mikey Day, 5 segments, but just 3:24. Andrew Smukes, only 2 segments, but 2:48. Sarah Sherman, 3 segments, 2:38. Ties her with Ben Marshall, who had 4 segments and 2:38 as well. Keenan Thompson, 5 segments, 2:37. Veronica Slawkowska, the lowest for the cast tonight with 1:33. A rough couple of episodes for Veronica. I hope we'll see her more in May. And then we got Cara O'Sullivan, one of the writers, 47 seconds. Leon Pendarvis from the band, 27 seconds for him. And then a couple of voiceovers from Steve Higgins, 20 seconds.
Thank you, John. As always, I want to bring up a through line from last week's By the Numbers, talking about Ashley Padilla. No surprise there. But I pulled the stat that, speaking of record breaking in the SNL stats era, she would need to average over the next 4 episodes, because we hadn't seen the Colman episode yet. She needed to average 9 minutes 23 for 4 weeks to tie the screen time average record that I have, which is Kate McKinnon season 44. So right now, Ashley's averaging 7 minutes 30 an episode. She increased that this week with a 10:20 episode. So she's got, a little bit less work to do in the next 3 if she can maintain now, about 9:20 an episode. So I want to get Rebecca's take. Can Ashley Padilla do it and break the single season screen time record?
Yes. And I feel confident about that. I mean, if anyone could do it, it's her. And you know what? I'm going to take my ceiling fan GoFundMe and just give her a big bonus after this season, because it's so crazy that she's did not get promoted mid-season for me. I mean, she is carrying this season, and I think she will definitely get there, because it's even like she's at the top again, and it's 3 sketches where we sing a bunch of people underneath her that were in 4 sketches, and Mikey was in 5. And it's just like, she's who stands out to me in all of these. And she does it in a way where she's not overpowering. I know this is kind of contradictory to the last statement where we're like, oh, Marcelo's longevity, he should just be like a background player. But for Ashley, she has to continue just doing whatever it is that she's doing, where she doesn't suck all the air out of the room, but we cannot look away from her. So she's really impressive. And I do think she has the potential in the next 3 episodes. Also, like, can you imagine her and Will interacting? Because that is like golden to me. And I hope that they can like find a way and a good rapport for the 2 of them together. That he was such a strong cast member too, in a very similar way, where even when he wasn't being the most Will Ferrell, all of our eyes were on him in the same way that it's on Ashley. So hopefully then they get a lot of time to like play around together.
Yeah, John, are you taking that bet? I feel like you're a pretty cautious bettor. Like, when we talk about these stats and like predictions, this is despite the season she's had, 17 in, this is her 5th episode with 10 or more minutes. So it's not like Ashley Padilla is putting up a 10 spot week to week. There's been a lot of 6s, 7s, 8s, couple 9s. This is the 5th 10 she's ever had. So to really rack up like 3 or 4 in a row of those to break the Keenan Kate record is tough to do. But as Rebecca said, if anyone can do it, it's season 2 Ashley Padilla.
They know what they have with her. So I think that even if they don't write a lot of Ashley-centric sketches in one of the next 3 episodes, she clearly could rack up that screen time. So to me, it's a non-question. Like, I think that she's going to get it. And they're invested in putting her in front as the face of the show. I think they genuinely know that they have a star on their hands. And, this is the best time of the year for me, Mike, with stats, like right here before this final run. I always love this area to come in and talk to you. And part of it is because there's 2 things that I always look for at this time of the year. One is, I think we can finally start to have the questions of who will return next year or not. I think that having those questions before, it's always fun. I always get a million questions of like, oh, do you think this person's coming back or not? And we can entertain them, but we don't have enough information yet to know. I think this is such a great time to say, all right, this is what we think. And if they could just get one more thing in there, then maybe that'll save their season. Or if they just don't have anything in May, sorry, not going to happen. So I think that that's number one. But number 2, I believe we're at the point of the season where we can start to properly figure out what the narrative of this season was for each of these cast members. Because to me, a season in a cast member's career where most people, not like Keenan, but most people have somewhere between, like, let's say 6 to 8 seasons, we look at every season as an important note in their legacy. So when you start to think about what this person means for their SNL career, an entire season is such a huge chunk of that. And with someone like Ashley, you're able to look now 17 episodes deep and say, all right, not only is she the greatest feature player we've seen at the show, and Mike, there's a lot of caveats that come with that because some people never got to second year feature player, but you could start to look at, is she the greatest second year player regardless of feature status? So that was something that I looked at last week, and she will be only the 6th person in the history of the show to lead the cast in segment appearances after 2 seasons. So in her second season, the last person to do it was Amy Poehler in season 28. So a very long time ago, over 22 years ago that she did that. The previous were Will Ferrell, Phil Hartman, Joe Piscopo, and Dan Aykroyd. So she's an elite company. She's still 10 ahead of the next person. As far as I'm concerned, she has a definite argument and is heading towards some rarefied air.
And you brought up about the questions that start to have an answer to them. You know, we speculate, we look at the data week to week. That's why we have fun on the show. 17 episodes of data out of 20. That's a really good number, which is why we should talk about the 2 cast members who spent probably the most time at the bottom of the list early, like in the fall, which Rebecca mentioned earlier in the night, is Jane Wickline and Cam Patterson, who both had their career highs. So Marcelo's career high, obviously, because it's the highest number I've recorded, but Jane Wickline with 743, Cam Patterson 732. They both shattered their own career highs. So really great time of year to have your best night. Rebecca, any comments on their nights?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jane has, I don't quite understand what's happened, but she has just really turned a corner here on the show. Like, even her update piece this week was one of the more viral clips of the night, which I think says a lot. And we've seen her other update pieces with her songs, which are very controversial in the way that she's not providing content that's bad. It's more like people just don't like her and they have not liked her. And that's just unfortunate and hard to get past. But people are starting to really like her. And I think it's twofold. I think one, the writers are starting to write her in pieces and write to her humor more. So give her the lines that fit her personality, because everyone on the show is different. And I think Jane's pretty unique, and we've never really seen anyone like her in the past, especially as deadpan as she is. So I think that they're starting to write to really help amplify and have her be part of a joke and not just someone in the background and not really getting anything. But even her in like the fashion like sketch this week, I think was a really good use of Jane to be like, where they're just like, she's the butt of the joke and they're like being mean to her and they're like, shouldn't you just drop out of like fashion school? Come on, like, what are you doing? And she just keeps getting like those daggers thrown at her. And I think that's one part of the reason why we're starting to see her turn a corner, is because the writing is geared towards her. But also I think she's stepping out of her comfort zone. Like her update piece this week was it a Jane character? Correct. But just by sitting by herself there without an instrument, without singing a song, and having such a hit, I think she also is like, all right, if they're going to start gearing stuff towards me, I can go out of my comfort zone too. And I think that's really impressive. Cam, I'm not even as sure. Like, I don't quite know why he was not having a super strong part of the first half of the season in his first season. But now, I mean, not like he was not a standout to me in this episode. Like the update piece was more Marcelo's in my mind. He really carried it, and Cam was kind of there. And then like even in the other ones, he had a lot of screen time, but I was not going to say that this is his big episode, the way that like I felt that Jane was turning a corner a lot more.
Well, I'll say about Cam is we talked last year about Jane Wickline's season, which was so hit or miss, was barely seen in sketches, did not get a pre-tape until this time last year with Walton Goggins that we talked about, was like maybe saved her SNL career, honestly. Tiny Baby Shoe could have literally granted the second Jane Wickline season, is that Cam Patterson has been thriving when he's on update. So if he's on update, he's had poor screen time. When he's on update, he at least gets 3 minutes. And he's also the only cast member out of the 17 we've seen this season who had back-to-back episodes on update. So I feel like if you look back on all the updates and you think about the pitching of update segment pieces, that maybe there is some, energy in the room where you go, well, they were on update last episode. So let's shelve that for next week. So for Cam Patterson being Snape with the Jack Black episode and now being part of a duo for the first time with Marcelo, he was able to finagle 2 updates in a row, which I think is impressive. It's only happened one other time this season, and it was Marcelo in episode 2 and 3. So now Cam's done it twice, and that's not the best way to have success on SNL, but it is a way to keep it going. So we talked about stats in the spring, the last third of the season, how the data showed that it really does have a difference-making effect to at least maintain or increase your screen time in the last third of the season, showed that you were brought back for a season almost always. There's only a couple exceptions. We don't have to get into them. But Rebecca brought up writing for people, and I want to give credit to the writers too for maybe just unlocking or figuring out Jane Wickline. So John, for some reason, maybe it's we should do some Jane end of run stats, because when John Schneider joins me on By the Numbers, it's at the end of a run typically, and we always end up talking about Jane Wickline from before the season till now. So has Jane Wickline just been unlocked and is not only out of danger watch, but is like one to watch, if you will?
I think she's firmly locked up a spot in the cast next year. And I have never seen anything like it. I think the closest comparison I could honestly make is Bill Murray, who I think had more experience coming into the cast, but had I think a good start. I don't recall everything episode to episode right now, but I think he had a good first episode and then was really rough for a few months. And then he had this whole thing where he apologized to the public for not being so good. That was a segment that they did back in season 2. And he really ended up turning around his career and ended up becoming just as much a star as the rest of the original Not Ready for Primetime players. I think that's it. I thought about Tim Meadows, but I think that even then it was more of a 10-year thing where his second 5 years were a lot better than his first 5 years. I've really never seen someone who was as close to having like a foot out the door as now I see firmly planted and having a place in this cast in the future. So, I can't wait to one day find out, which writers she worked with or what exactly happened over the holidays to really figure out how to unlock her voice on the show. But it is one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen in 51 years of the show.
And that's high praise from the producer of everything you need to know about SNL. So something he's never seen before, then you should take note of that, listeners. But one more thing I have to mention, because this is a stat show, is James Austin Johnson with some pretty big milestones, saying live from New York for the 50th time, joining just an elite class of people of, the record leaders with Kate McKinnon and Daryl Hammond, also Kenan Thompson and Dana Carvey. So that's a really elite list of SNL. And remember, James has not been on the show as long as a Mikey or, of course, a Kenan has. So it just shows, he really is the cold open king, the successor to Daryl Hammond in that regard. And he also tied Alec Baldwin's Trump impression record. So if that's a stat that makes you sad or happy, then, you decide that for yourself. But it's pretty crazy to think about how long it took. I mean, that it happened this quickly, I should say. But Alec Baldwin did do it in 5 fewer episodes. So we saw a little bit more Baldwin in the same span that we saw Judge as Trump. So I want to shout out him as well. But we get a lot to cover.
Mike, I have a question for you.
Actually, go ahead.
To put you on the spot completely, has James had an episode where his pre-tape or live sketch or update was longer than the cold open, like bar, if we're looking at the bar graph here?
Of any cold open, definitely. I mean, when he's Trump in the cold open, typically those are the longest ones. Handful of Bidens in 47 for sure. But yeah, there's been a decent number of episodes where James has had like a decent sketch or update piece that has outweighed the cold open bar.
I think this year, a few times especially, I think he's really done something where he's been like, I think as we go to the end of the season and do our postseason By the Numbers, I think the pie chart is going to look a little bit better for him than it did in previous years.
Yeah, we've seen him do like the boy band sketch
Yeah.
Like there's things that you don't think about right away with James Austin Johnson that
Yeah, that's
he's
fair.
had
He
really
like took
a leading
singing
role in.
lessons this summer,
The
last
pilot
summer, and
sketch earlier this season too.
Yeah, Nikki Glazer's episode. That's actually a great segue though. So we're gonna move on to what makes an SNL star. That's a really hard question, but it's a question that we've been trying to answer of how many years of this podcast, John, going back to season 46. So I decided to look at two metrics that try to figure that out. So, all hail the power ranking for really measuring impact, but let's look at more granular data right now, for the nerd segment of the night, which is looking at who's getting the most time per appearance. We champion and herald screen time, appearances, power ranking, all that. But if you're making appearances that are very long, then you're probably the lead of that sketch more often than not. So look at that. That's screen time per appearance. So we can sort that data. And also, who's getting the most time in quote unquote prime time, which is between cold open and update. There's a lot of ways you can get there. You can be like James Austin Johnson, play the sitting president in most of the cold opens and rack up time there. You can be an update anchor. That's the easy way because you're always on update. Or you can be like a Sarah or Marcelo and frequently appear on update. There's also a third way, I think the hardest way, which is what Ashley Padilla is doing, which is racking up tons of sketches leading off the night, doing at least a couple political impressions, Caroline Levitt, Kristi Noem, and we saw Pam Bondi last week. So that's the third way. And then, of course, pre-tapes are in there as well. So anything that falls between the opening of the show to the end of weekend update is deemed prime time. So let's look at that 1 second. But screen time per appearance, John, of course, we're going to see Jost and Che up top averaging because they're on update each week. But looking at after that, threw Bowen in there because it was last season and we more likely to see him there. Honestly, though, we saw more Bowen after update in this final season. Interesting thought. Ashley Padilla is next with 1:33. She not only leads this cast in screen time, but in appearances. More appearances you get is going to dilute this number. She's maintained that. So that's why she's having one of the greatest years of all time. 93 seconds per appearance. Then Sarah Sherman, James Austin Johnson, for Trump mostly, but he's had a lot of good moments too. And then there's a fall off to the midsection. So let's look at those cast members right there after the update anchors. Bowen, Marcelo, Ashley, Sarah, and Jadge. Now that Bowen's gone, I feel like those are the cast members that are getting the leads. That's what the data is showing. John, just first take on this stat.
Well, I think that what we're trying to measure here, if I could boil it down, is Q rating. I think if you're going to go and walk to a random person on the street and say, who do you know that's on the SNL cast right now? I think this is the best way to compute that data without just doing a survey of 100 random people. Because I think that the screen time per appearance is just such an impactful number to boil down of like, what do my eyes tell me? And I think that it's very obvious to see that Marcelo and Ashley, Sarah and James are the people that are being pushed the most in season 51. So this data totally tracks. And I think it's a really valuable number that, frankly, I don't think, Mike, we push enough, whether it's on social media or do it in this podcast, because I think it's something that if part of the goal of the show is to go from nothing to something and that SNL will be a launch pad for the rest of your career, then I think that this number ultimately tells you which people will be attractive for TV and film roles after they're done on SNL. And clearly Marcelo and Ashley and Sarah are already high candidates for that. And then I think James, is a little bit more niche in terms of his ability to do impressions and playing the president, but that doesn't mean that his talent won't translate into other areas when pushed there. And I think that this is a very healthy number for him.
Definitely. And with a slightly smaller cast, and if you look at the leaderboard of appearances we put out on socials today, you see that even the lowest cast member has a decent number of appearances through 17 episodes, and someone like a Ben Marshall or a Cam Patterson has had really honestly a decent number of appearances. But how do you quantify and really measure those? So let's look at the bottom of the list real quick. Under a minute, Tommy Brennan, 57 seconds per appearance. Jeremy Culhane, 56. Ben Marshall, 54. Cam Patterson, 52. So we talked about Cam Patterson on update, how much that would weigh this number heavier. Think about all the other appearances of Cam Patterson have really brought this down to under a minute because we've seen Cam for, 2 seconds in the playing the plumber in a sketch earlier in the pre-tape. That was his one appearance of the night. Things like that. There's also voiceovers on SNL by the numbers doing all the stats. We do that as well. So that's great for a James or a Chloe, great for a Beck or a Cecily before doing those voiceovers for 8 seconds in a pre-tape commercial. We'll weigh this down too. So looking at a Marcelo and Ashley, it's diluting that for sure. So the power ranking at the end we'll look at to see how it kind of all shakes out. But in this one stat, Marcelo and Ashley, meaning that when they're in a sketch, they're in it for more than a minute and a half. So Rebecca, what do you make of all this?
I mean, just looking at this, we could break it into 3 different sections. I'm going to say Bowen's the outlier here for what I'm about to say next, but we're looking from the bottom up. We see Cam, Ben, Jeremy, Tommy, Jane, Veronica. Those are the newbies. The screen time makes total sense. Like looking at them, that's exactly where they should be on this. This is their first, second season, and that's where they should be. And then we have the top part. So we're looking at Marcelo, Ashley, Sarah, James, and looking at them, those are like the next face of SNL. So that's probably who the big bets are on to continue this on for the next few seasons. They're getting more screen time. And then we kind of have just like the veterans in the middle there. So Mikey, Andrew, Keenan, Chloe, those are the people that we're used to seeing them. They're able to anchor sketches. People feel comfortable working with them. We see them more than the new players because they're easier to throw in less of a background role, but not the main role because their experience, they're doing a good job. But now they're seeing I'm going to step aside and let everyone else take the reign. I said Bowen's the outlier because he, even when he was like fading off and transitioning on the next group of people, he still had a ton of screen time. But I think Bowen is probably one of the more unique cast members we'll ever see on the show in terms of like where he falls in screen time. But this makes sense, and it's always satisfying. I'm sure, Mike, you get this as a numbers guy when the numbers make sense, and this makes total sense for like how the show historically runs and how they're planning the future of the show.
Also, Mike, the thing about Bowen that Rebecca's bringing up is that not only is he no longer on the show, in which we won't get too much into him, but I also think that he's a unicorn in the way that we can look at this data because he, to me, was more famous outside of SNL than he was on SNL. And it's usually the reverse for most cast members. So he in a way was what you get with a host, which is you put him in sketches because he's going to bring fans to Saturday Night Live versus people, watching someone on SNL and then they taking their career outside of the show. So I would not look at it that way. And I don't know that we're ever going to get anyone like Bowen in that sense, but I love the way that Rebecca categorized these things because I do think that even for some of the veterans in that yellow group, those are the people that if you were to ask a random person on the street, they might say like, is Mikey Day still on this show? Just generalizing because he's not everywhere, but he has enough that people might recognize him, might know him from his career. And it's like, oh, right. Okay, cool. He's still there.
And we saw that this week with the screen time graphic we just looked at, which was Keenan and Mikey having, I think, 5 appearances each and being in the bottom third of the cast because they're like very much plug and play players at this point that can do anything, but don't necessarily have the star making power. We're not anointing them the next star of SNL because they've been there that long. They can't be the next star of SNL, where Marcelo, Ashley, and Sarah can be. They're all 47 to present cast members. And then finally, the last stat, which is primetime screen time, people that you're seeing get the first sketch, get the cold opens, pop up in a monologue, or get the first pre-tape. These are all things that if you have 3 pre-tapes on the table, which one's going to go first? We have, 10 sketches on the table. Which one's going to go first? We've analyzed that a lot in this show. Why do they pick that first sketch? What makes this first pre-tape early in the night material versus late in the night material? And these are the people who are winning at that metric, which Ashley Padilla, of course, leading the screen time, is going to be there. But after that is, of course, James for the impression, but Marcelo and Sarah again. So these are just kind of proving this hypothesis of, can we figure out who the SNL stars are with just 2 metrics? I think you kind of have it here, John.
Yeah, and I also think that it allows us to consider coming off of 50 that we probably were going to have a lot of women at the top with losing Heidi and Ego. But what we see now, as the data has started to populate through more like the sample size is higher now, that we're able to actually see that we actually have 2 men and 2 women at the top. And it's more of, how are you building your stars in your cast? And you could genuinely see that it is not just gender specific to who is getting the most screen time in a given part of the show. It is actually the cream is sort of rising to the top here.
For sure. And seeing Sarah Sherman have the best 5-episode run of her career after a little slump, then this week kind of returning back to under 3 minutes, which is more rare for Sarah these days than ever, because she's getting 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and just, like I said, had 5 episodes of the best of her career. To be, an hour and 5 minutes. Rebecca mentioned at the top of the show, a lot of guests mentioned it. The Sarah Squirm versus Sarah Normal thing is, if we ever need to look at a stat, it's right there, is that we're not seeing 10-1 Sarah being the next Forte, or always doing this kind of gross out humor that you don't see early in the show. So we're seeing Sarah Sherman excel at Update and just be the woman in sketch that we need. Mikey Day, Kenan Thompson were always man in sketch for a lot of their careers, for better or worse, as far as leading or supporting, where Sarah Sherman, with an hour and 5 minutes of her time, which is 62% of her time this season, is in prime time. Marcelo 77% or 76%, and Ashley 65%. So I also have to look at that, because you look at their whole stat sheet, how much of their time is spent in this segment. I do that for every segment, and I also do that for prime time. So you look at Michael Che, it's 100 because all his time's on Update. Colin Jost, it's 99%. He's only had 1 appearance after Update. It was this week at playing the 4th pimp. So you look at that kind of number and you think about, well, of their time, how much of it is at the top of the show where SNL logically deems the most eyeballs are on the show. A lot of people can watch on YouTube. If there's a very successful sketch, doesn't matter where it's in the night, but we'll talk about that later. This is really about who's opening the show, anchoring the early pieces, and I think we've really decided it, John. It's really, if we didn't know it by now, Ashley, James, Marcelo, Sarah, they're the ones to shepherd in the new era. Some of them have been on the show for already 4+ years, some of them for 2, like Ashley, but this is like a core that I think you need for next season and beyond, for sure. Any final thoughts?
Just the way way Colin's going, though, we could see that drop to like 80%. I mean, he's clearly having so much fun in these sketches, and I think it's so funny every time we see his face. So like, I'm here for it in the next 3 episodes for him just to become a full sketch player for the rest of this season.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too, because we're gonna hop over the pond real quick, but we'll get back to Jost, I promise you. So SNL UK, John, you've been pulling double duty yourself, like Olivia Rodrigo, Harry Styles, to name a Brit, for double duty, which is covering SNL UK week to week, sometimes 2 in one night. So tell the folks how you do it. Would you have a clean urine test right now? How are you pulling this off?
Yeah, I don't talk about my steroid usage, but I've been preparing years for this, Mike. This is so much fun. Seriously, getting to talk about all of these new, fresh faces. It's the dream to, ask yourself, what if SNL started over? And I'm having a blast because the shows have been great.
Agreed. So we had Jack White, Jack Black, but we also had Jack Whitehall, Georgia Smith this week. So let's talk about the screen time for the SNL UK cast after their first break, halfway through the first series of SNL UK.
Yeah, we continued the jack off this week with Jack Whitehall hosting the show and being in 8 segments and 20 minutes and 50 seconds of screen time. I believe this is the 2nd highest screen time for the hosts from SNL UK so far, slightly behind Tina Fey, but still a pretty good number ahead of Riz Ahmed and Jamie Dornan. Jack Shep continues to be a great asset to SNL UK all over the show and really had a great final sketch of the night. 6 segments and 13 minutes and 10 seconds of screen time. Celeste Dring 8 segments and 11 minutes of screen time, 11 minutes, 12 seconds. She really, I felt kind of needed a good week and was voted MVP. So I was so excited to see her finally breaking out and having a great moment over there. Al Nash also having a really good last couple of episodes. So both Celeste and Al, been really impressed with them the last 2 weeks, 10 minutes and 52 seconds. Annabelle Marlowe, 5 segments for her, 9:18. So really great nights from all of those cast members. Georgia Smith, our musical guest, 6:44. Hamed Adamashan, 6 minutes and 22 seconds. And then we drop down to George Fouracres, who had 2 pretty big sketches. The dad swap commercial, which he anchored, and then him and Jack Shep in the golf sketch, 4:44 for George. Ayo Ade was in 3 segments, did a voiceover in 2 other segments, 4:31. Patty Young on Weekend Update, 4 minutes and 29 seconds. Emma Seedy had a really big moment at the beginning of the night with Melania, 4 minutes and 19 seconds for her. Larry Dean, a decent number, 4 minutes and 7 seconds. Still waiting for a really big starring Larry Dean moment, 4 segments for him. And Anya Magliano on Weekend Update, 3:59 for her. And then we have some writers: Lorna Rose Treen, 2 minutes, 8 seconds, 2 segments. Chris Cantrell, 2 segments, 1:56. Tom Parry, an extra comedian from the UK, was in one of the sketches, 26 seconds. Bella Hall, a writer, 24 seconds. And Humphrey Kerr, one of the writers, did a voiceover for 20 seconds.
Well done. And I love that Fouracres is at 4:44, because I saw when Colman Domingo hosted, he was the 666th person to host SNL and the 444th man. So a lot of number synergy going on this week.
Wow.
Rebecca, have you been following the SNL UK universe at all?
Yes, I have.
All right, amazing. Love your take.
It's really interesting to see something from the beginning and to like live this real time. And you have a whole show of just everyone's new to me. And I'm sure in the UK they're a little more famous, but everyone's new to me. And I would say just probably Larry, and then we'll talk about like the update anchors aside, and then Jack Shep outside of this. Everyone's basically just like battling it out week after week. And yes, like Celeste and Al are having really strong 2 episodes now, but their first 2 weren't as strong. And I don't know, it's kind of like the rat race for us to see like who's going to come out on top. I mean, for Jack Shep, though, being on the top of this every week, it's really impressive. And I cannot speak to the following he had coming onto the show, but it's just really crazy as like a room of writers. It's how do you know who's going to get good reception from people? And I feel like that is why we're seeing everyone in the middle and have some really strong episodes, have some not. And besides Jack, I can't quite say that there's any standouts. Besides, I would say that the update anchors are just getting a lot of good feedback online. I think the style of the dry British humor is really resonating with people, and we're wishing we could get some more of that in the US, and you could just say a lot more on the BBC. So I think that's different, like for them, but everyone else, it's every week it's different. You don't know what you're going to get into it every episode. I think that's fun. And I'm sure once we get to like the midpoint of the season, we will have the 3-4 people that do stand out, and we know that they're going to be in a lot more sketches. But Jack Shep did something before the show to these writers to like build up such confidence in the fact that like he can have such screen time, and we feel comfortable already in 4 episodes with him. But everyone else in the middle, it's just kind of fun for me as a viewer and a fan of the show and SNL to be like, who's going to come out on top this week? Because you really don't know. We're only 4 episodes in, and besides Jack, there's not really like a major standout in terms of screen time. I think George Fouracres is a standout, but that's not necessarily in terms of screen time. I think he's very unique, and that's what's resonating with people a lot. But it's just, I don't know, it's fun to see this and just to be able to look episode by episode.
It's definitely been fun to see. I think Jack Shep and George Fouracres are in really a league of their own as far as totaling right now, and Jack Shep's been on top of the chart for almost every episode. George Fouracres really dipped only in episode 2. But this, I think if they were starting the show and they had a mission to do 4 episodes in a row of a brand new comedy sketch series, and they wanted to introduce everyone to the viewers, they completely succeeded that. Really, other than Larry Dean, that's the only caveat I can add, because he hasn't had a like really leading sketch. We've seen him enough to really recognize him now. Like when I watch the show, I have no problem discerning who's who, and even with like, makeup or costumes, I really know what's going on. So other than Larry Dean, we see Patty and Anya on Update. They've really done a fantastic brilliant job of introducing everybody. So it's an 11-person cast, so it doesn't take too long. But 4 episodes in, I feel really confident about everyone who pops on screen. And I agree with Rebecca. It's been fun to watch. And Celeste and Al were 2 of like the kind of down the chart players that I was kind of like, I don't know what we're going to get from them. Al Nash was the only cast member that I knew about. I followed him on Instagram and I like his stuff. So I was happy to see him. Didn't see him too much other than the debut on Update, the Tina Fey episode. And now he's had 8 appearances this week and is 3rd in the cast. Celeste voted MVP, 11 minutes second in the cast and screen time. So they've really done a good job, John.
It's incredible. I think that this is the greatest ensemble we've seen on Saturday Night Live in probably 20 years. I mean, you have to go back to season 32 where there was a pared down cast and everyone, got their parts. I think, there's just been such a hierarchy that has developed on SNL US in the last, 20 years. And there were moments before that, before they pared things down, but it just goes to show you with a pared down cast to a number of this size of 11 cast members and really 9 performers, since you have the 2 update anchors, you can produce shows like this. And I think it's the best version of Saturday Night Live. The fact that anyone could pop up any single week, it really feels more like a team than individuals. And of course, we're going to track the data because eventually someone will break out and will be, at the absolute top and someone will be at the bottom. But I think the show has done an excellent job of trying to build an ensemble. And it goes to show you with, you see how much online everyone's supporting everyone. I can understand why they're having such a great time producing the show.
Definitely. And before you read out the power rankings after 4 weeks of SNL UK, I just want to give my observation that no one has really had a bad episode yet. We see bad episodes stat-wise in SNL US all the time. It doesn't mean they're having a bad season, just, that week they really weren't used. Even on the bottom of this chart, John, there's no like red and orange numbers yet. They're all like yellow and green. Everyone's kind of doing great, and some people are doing good.
Well, I thought about changing the colors on this chart to be proportional to the numbers that we're seeing, but I think it's more fun to keep things the same colors as US, so we could really see if somebody's having a good episode or a bad episode compared to what we're used to. Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't really think anyone has. Yes, for SNL UK, Al Nash maybe had a bad week 2. Larry had a bad week 3, but no one is really being shut out or close to being shut out at this point, which I think is, I don't think we're going to see any shutouts in a cast of this size on SNL UK. So yes, I think Larry is the one who does have work to do if we're talking about anybody in the next 4 episodes. But as far as I'm concerned, James and the producers at SNL UK have done a fantastic job incorporating every single person into the ensemble. So let's go through the power rankings here. We got Jack Shep still at the top with 183.6 after putting up a 218.7 this week. So really just great stuff there from Jack, great star of the show. George Fouracres, somebody that everybody wants to see more of, only 83.6 this week, but still remains in second place with a 132.9. We get Annabelle Marlowe moving up to third place with a 128.8 after 4 episodes, 153.5 in week 4. Celeste Dring, a huge week for her, a 184.5 moves up to a 128. Hamed goes down to a 123.4, but puts up about average with a 123.1 week. Al Nash moves up as well, a 196.9 for Al, so a huge number for him, moves up to 6th place with 117.8. Then we got Ayoade, who moves down to 7th place here, 109.2, after putting up a 78.9. So a little bit of a lighter week here for Ayoade, her probably lightest of the season. Emma Seedy had a good start to the episode, and then mostly bit rolls for the rest of the night. 87.9 for Emma, down to 8th place with 104.5. We have Patty there staying consistently in the 9 slot with his update anchor appearance at 61.9, an average of 71.4. Larry Dean does move past Anya Magliano for last place with an 82.9 and a 68.6. And then Anya is in last place at this point with a 56.4 on update and a 62.6 overall ranking.
So Larry had his best episode yet, is what the data is suggesting right here. So, if you're joining us from the UK, looking at this graphic and being like, what the bloody hell is this? Then really it's just taking all the stats objectively and putting them into an algorithm saying like, how much did they impact that week? And so now we're seeing that Jack Shep hasn't really taken his foot off the gas. There's just plenty of petrol in the machine right now. And George Fouracres has really only had 1 week where that happened. So that's why they're up 2. Annabelle Marlowe's second week was just monstrous. So that's really carried it. But this week 4 has been great as well. And Celeste Ring bring up to 4th place after a monster week for her. So we're going to move on to the next segment. But Rebecca, who do you think is going to be second place if Jack Shep stays this dominant? Will it be George Fouracres or will one of the women come up to number 2?
I think we'll see George stay in second. I think this was like his numbers would be very different if he didn't have that week 2. So I think that's probably where this is going, and people are just yearning for him, and they want more Fouracres. And I think he probably is the biggest following now from the cast. Yeah, and he probably is the biggest following, and I think they're going to capitalize on that because especially when you're so new, if people are giving you the feedback that they love someone, then you give them what they want. And yeah, this all makes sense. I'm curious how it'll play out though with the women on the cast there, if they're gonna battle it out for 3rd and 4th, or if we're gonna just like see some more diversity with them each week. Because there's not like a consistent, at least in my opinion, there's not like one standout female cast member that I'm like, yes, you're the one. And I'm just curious how that's gonna continue to play out.
I feel like it's Annabelle, maybe. Yeah, I feel like Annabelle maybe is the woman that's standing up the most for me, at least.
I think I get Annabelle and Emma mixed up with each other.
I get that sometimes too. Like in that golf sketch, when they came out as the players' wives, like I mixed up like who was who. They do look alike sometimes when they're in costume and makeup, but yeah. I agree with you. But I do think she's standing out the most out of anyone. Before we move on, Mike, we haven't had a chance on the podcast to talk very briefly about the upcoming episodes of SNL UK when they announce the headliners. So I just would love to know what you guys think that's coming up. So Nicola Coughlan from Bridgerton fame and Dairy Girls coming up and hosting the next episode with music from the Foo Fighters. So that's very exciting. And then the next episode, the same night that we have Olivia Rodrigo, earlier in the night, we're going to have Amy Lou Wood come and host the show, which could be very fun for a lot of reasons with music from Meek. So I would love to know what you both think of that.
I'm so excited for Amy's episode. I think that's someone that when we were first talking SNL UK and it was first dropping, it was around the same time as her breakout on White Lotus, at least like a resurgence of Amy, I would say. And that was one of the first people that came to my mind and being like, she would be an incredible host because she's fun, she's funny, and I know that she actually has some beef with the show because of the depiction of her in the SNL White Lotus sketch, and it was like the political White Lotus sketch, and they really were just like kind of horrible to her. So I feel like they will address this in some sort of monologue and maybe like flash to that episode, or it just sucks because it's the same night that they can't like have a cameo of someone. Like, who was it? Was it Sarah, right?
It was
Sarah dressed like her. Yeah. So like that in my mind would be like such low hanging fruit that would make it really good. But unfortunately, that very likely will not happen unless it's like a pre-recorded or something, maybe for promos. That could be a sense. But I'm really excited for her. We already saw Nicola on there and come out during Tina's monologue. So, and she came out in that Fouracre sketch as well. So I think that that'll be really interesting. And I think she'll do a great job. I mean, she's funny, she's comfortable, she's will be one of the first 5 timers on UK. I mean, that's kind of jumping the gun here a bit, but like it's already her second appearance and she was in 2 sketches on her first episode, not even one Tina Fey's hosting. So like I'm very excited to see what she can do. And then one last question, are the Foo Fighters British? Because I did not know that.
They're not.
They're very American.
Okay, I didn't think so. Because in my mind, they're like the most American like group, but like it's just interesting that then they're going to be on SNL UK.
Yeah, this will be the first American musical guest. We've had American hosts with Tina. And now we'll have the Foo Fighters. Yeah, my take is brief, really echoing what Rebecca said. When Amy Lou Wood, exciting because when that controversy happened, I was really just thinking like, once in a while, SNL will do what SNL does every week and someone will get offended and that's their right. But like, I always assume that, maybe they just don't get what SNL is. So if someone's kind of taking a jab at them, they don't like it, then they've just never seen the show or they don't really understand the mechanics.
It wasn't a funny joke was the whole thing. They just like made fun of her appearance and like there wasn't the humor that backs it, which I think SNL usually does. Well, they do in a celebrity sense. In like a political sense, in a cold open, no, they don't do that. And they'll make fun of appearances. when someone did absolutely nothing and then just like caught a stray for no reason whatsoever, like that kind of sucks. And we don't really see that as much. And Amy spoke on it. So I think that's even more interesting. And this might be their way of righting their wrong, or maybe she wasn't at like viscerally offended by this, but like, what did she do to catch a stray? I don't
That's
really
a fair
know.
point, but at the same time, that's a very modern lens to look at SNL. If you look back at the show, they've been brutal to celebrities when they weren't the subject of the sketch. They were just depicted in a not very flattering
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Either, you know, I don't even want to name an example, but there's been a lot of cases where
I think of a good example, like I know Jenna Bush Hager talks about it a lot, like the way that they depicted her, but that's also political, but she wasn't in politics. It was like, I don't really know, but like the Amy like stray was so seemingly so unnecessary. And I think that's what the discourse was about. It was like, this was a political sketch. So you have so much there to play with. And then they just like made fun of her appearance for like kind of no reason. So that's why people were like more
taken.
outraged.
I'm just saying that's a 21st century, especially 2020s lens to look at. And a celebrity has every right to respond online or in an interview or something. I love that.
Mike, I'm Gen Z. I'm sensitive.
Yeah.
Also, Amy has an opportunity to make fun of Sarah on SNL UK.
Yeah,
and she totally should. I think that would be a great opportunity and everyone would love it. So I hope the show doesn't back away from it thinking that the UK audience is not going to understand what's going on. I think use the monologue to say what happened and what happened with the controversy back in May or April of last year. And I think then so the audience does know what's up, and then have a great jab at Sarah. Like I think that's what would make this whole thing full circle.
Yeah, just don't play softball, bring a sketch that has a lot of teeth to it, and just bring it full force. Don't hold back. So let's put the helmet on and hop on the segue and do question 1 of 5 questions. It was bound to happen that SNL and SNL UK would cover the same topics on the same night, as they do air, not the same hour, different time zones. But both cold opens included Melania Trump, played by Emma Seedy in the UK, Chloe Fineman in the US hours later. Could we envision a scenario of coordinating cold opens airing in the same night? John, I know you want to talk about this one because it is possible that we could do it.
Okay, so I could envision a scenario. And the other day I was reading, I think it was, I forget which publication it is, so I apologize. But I was reading a publication that was talking about the SNL, the NBC executives that were worried about putting SNL UK on Peacock the same night that it aired, because it would cause confusion where people would be looking for the SNL US episode and click on the SNL UK episode instead. And I was thinking to myself, this is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. And then they said that they moved it from 9 p.m. the next day to 1 p.m. the next day because they realized, okay, this is what people want. I'm like, they are so far behind on what people want. This show should absolutely be airing live in the US. And I believe in my heart that if this continues for years to come, one day SNL UK will stream live on Peacock simultaneously to when it airs in the UK. I think that's the only way that SNL as a global show will succeed, is just to have things be live so you can enjoy it as it's happening. So that is the point in which I think we will have some coordination, because that's the fun. It's the Easter eggs of the show. I love what they did with Tina last week in the Jack Black monologue. But to answer your question directly, do I think that SNL US should ever hold back if SNL UK does something? I don't. And I would also be very disappointed if SNL US ever vetoed anything that SNL UK was doing and said, like, no, we're doing Melania tonight, so you guys can't do it. I would hate that.
Oh, for sure. They're completely freestanding things as far as coordinating, like, oh, we're going to do this, lay off that tonight. But I want to get Rebecca's take and do a follow-up too, which was, thoughts on the interpretations. We've been talking in the nascency of SNL UK is, what are the differences? What are you liking about this show versus, the show we've been watching for 51 seasons? So did you see both those cold opens and think that one was a better impression or it's a better take on the week?
Realistically, and say what you want about her, and everyone will, but going up in an impression battle against Chloe Fineman is a losing battle. And unfortunately, like for Emma to come out and have that first comparison, like Chloe's not the girl you want to go against. And she's really good and she's always gonna be good. And she did, if we're gonna compare them, a significantly better job. But in terms of shying away from having stuff, realistically, it's only going to be in the case where the UK covers the US, at least in as the political climate continues. The US gives a lot more content for cold opens than the UK does, and they're going to keep doing that. I would love to see like really good impressions, and I think it's fun to compare head and head because realistically, we do that. We can compare Trump impressions. We already were in this episode tonight. Like, I think that it's more fun for us. And to John, your point, I didn't know that. I was curious why. I didn't know if it was like streaming rights or cable rights that they weren't airing it till 9 p.m. the next night and then they moved it up randomly. I think they should stream it live. I think they're going to get more viewers. They obviously saw a massive drop off in viewers from the first episode to the second. And I think streaming it and then having free promo, aka Tina on the Jack Black monologue, talk about UK countless times, I think that's only going to help. But if Peacock's not setting that streaming up, then like, sure, that free promo and having Tina, who could be the successor to Lauren and is one of the biggest names on SNL, like give you that promo on the show and then not having it air like right after seems just like such a missed opportunity. Like, what if people didn't even know about UK? Tina's on the monologue talking about UK. Someone wants to check it out and the episode's not there. Like, that just doesn't seem smart in my mind to do that. So I hope that they can start even streaming it live, but putting it on maybe right after the episode airs or right after SNL airs in the US time. I don't know. But I think it's fun. I don't see them in a world, I don't see them coordinating where they're like, we're going to put in this Easter egg and we'll continue a storyline from this sketch to this sketch. But I don't think they should shy away from just stepping on each other's toes because I think that's only going to make for more internet discourse, which is free marketing for the show. And they love when people go viral. They love all the stuff online. So why not have that comparison?
And Rebecca, you inspired me on two things. I know we're up against it. We're going to rattle through these, but Chloe Fineman had never done that impression live. That was interesting because, Cecily did it for so long. The first time Chloe did it was in that White POTUS piece that had the Amy Lou Wood reference. And then she did it in the Property Brothers earlier this season with Miles Teller. So first time we did that. So, Chloe was not, a pro at that impression by any point at that juncture. And then I wanted to ask, like, are we going to see a SNL UK Trump in the next 4 episodes, John Schneider? What do you think? Just because that would be big. That would make headlines in American, Canadian press. Like, people who are not yet aware of SNL UK will, say we want about Trump, he gets clicks. Cold opens on SNL US get clicks, even when the fans hate them. So if we have a Trump in SNL UK, I think that would be good for the show, and you could really go maybe harder at him. People criticize the show in the US for not being too hard on him.
I think we will. I'm curious if it'll be Patty because he did his voice in the first cold open of this season. But I think the question you asked, Rebecca, was really interesting. If I could just do one more minute on this, which is that I think that Chloe Fineman's impression was a better impersonation of Melania, but I think Emma's was a better impression. And the reason is because the writing was a lot stronger for me with Emma's. I think the concept was genius, and she played it really silly in a way that I look for in my SNL impressions, is that she built this like aloof version of Melania who's just like wandering into a barbecue. And I felt like that worked for the sketch. And you'll never find, or rarely ever find, anyone who could do a better impression or impersonation of Trump than James Austin Johnson. But if the writing is so good in SNL UK for a British impression of Trump, then to me, that could be a better SNL impression, and it's okay to say that.
I'm glad you brought that up because I liked how, we're comparing and contrasting the two shows who both included Melania in, this week in the news. But this one was centered around her, and it was very slice of life concept. Friends at a barbecue playing Never Have I Ever, and there's Melania in the bushes, rather than having James Austin Johnson, home base, cold open. All right, let's get in Melania. Let's get in Hegseth. Let's get in Tiger Woods, played by Keenan. But really, it's just James. And we're just going to run through the week. And that's what we do here on SNL US, where this one was like, this story has enough to it that we can just make the cold open normal people and then make Melania the character, not just the impression vocally or looks wise. So I'm glad we did cover that. Can we move on to question 2? All right. It was reported yesterday that season 2 of Pop Culture Jeopardy will become Netflix's first ever daily program, with an episode being released Monday through Friday from May 11th to June 5th. He had 10 appearances now so far, outside update, and he has the 6th best screen time average of any cast member in 8 years, 702. I mentioned Ashley was at 730. Colin's at 702. Is there a conscious effort brewing to boost Colin Jost's profile now in his 13th season as cast member and 21st at SNL? And where does he go from here? Rebecca, I'd love to know your take on this. Like, what's going on behind the scenes to make Colin Jost profile? John mentioned the phrase Q rating earlier. What's going on here, Rebecca?
I honestly don't think so. If Pop Culture Jeopardy was on Peacock, I would say sure, yeah. But since it's on Netflix, I don't think so. I think he's just honestly going a little stir crazy and just bored and wants to do more. Like I think he's like loosening his tie a little bit and it's just like down to clown a little bit more. I don't think it's a conscious effort. I think when he raises his hand says, "Oh, I'll be that pimp." Like no one's gonna say no because it's funny. And I just think he's bored right now. He's been on the show for so long.
But do you think maybe that in the NBC universe, like we know, like the Colbert's Late Show is ending. Like, if we've seen Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon, Conan O'Brien back over 30 years ago, go from SNL to talk show host, and that format has been declining. We've seen Kimmel get taken off the air and put back on
I know,
air.
but you're not
Controversy.
talking about anything in NBC universe, so I don't think it's intentional. Like
Well, I'm
you're
saying
talking
that's the
CBS, you're
Netflix
talking
thing.
ABC, you're talking Netflix. Like they're such competitors that I don't think NBC would give any of their competitors any sort of leg up by just like boosting Colin to get more Netflix views. I think it's such like a streamer each streamer world that like they wouldn't consciously do that.
That's not the question, though. I'm saying is that we're seeing Colin Jost at this point in his career be moved forward. It has nothing to do with Netflix or other networks and NBC. There's no coordination, speaking of that, going on. I mean that something is happening where, yeah, he could be bored and say, put me in a sketch. But it's just the data of all this. This is SNL stats. Like something is happening where he's either more willing to do it or
I think he's more willing. I don't think this is like intentional. I think he's just like, sure, why the hell not? Like, I think that's maybe more. And I know this our favorite topic is, are people leaving? What's going on next? Like, we thought that there was a huge chance that he did not return last season. I think that Che's behavior, I think last season was the biggest reason why we all thought like, okay, yeah, maybe they won't be returning. I don't see them. I don't see them doing it without each other, but like this does kind of feel like, hey, my time on this show is almost done. I just like kind of want to have fun.
Right, John, I want to bring you into this because it's really a question not about like what's next. I mean, I'm happy for you to weigh in on that, but boosting a profile of Colin Jost, who's in his mid-40s, he's known for Update, him and Che as a pair, and being Scarlett Johansson's husband. He's getting opportunities outside of SNL, which is great. Maybe he can be in the Lauren Succession conversation with, other people who are mentioned, Steve Higgins, Keenan, Tina, people like that people mention online all the time. So we don't chalk things up to coincidences and fun on this show, John. So I want your take.
Well, my take is that I think it was a happy circumstance or even a happy coincidence that Hegseth sort of resembled Jost and they were able to put him in a sketch. And I think he just had so much fun with it that he said, if you ever want me to do this more, I'll do it. He's not the head writer anymore. He still contributes every now and then, but I think he's available when people need him around for stuff. And especially with, Bowen gone and, Longfellow and Devin and some of the other veterans from last year, like I just felt like, okay, maybe they could use an extra veteran in the cast to do stuff every now and then. So it has made sense to me, but I think it's very easy to look at somebody like Colin Jost and say, well, you've been on the show for so long. We know what you can do. And that's it. But the truth is that he's not so different than other cast members who are more like rookies and are continuing to learn and grow in sketch performing. Yes, he's been at the show for 21 years, but most of them was writing. And I think anchoring update is a completely different skill than performing in sketches. So for me, I know he did the Buttigieg stuff a few years ago, but this is the most we've ever seen him. And I think he's getting better at it. So if he's going to continue to improve and hone this new skill, if you're managing the team and you see that the guy at the end of the bench has this other skill that you can use, why wouldn't you use him more?
Wrong, John. Mike wanted a scientific answer and a reason why he's in more. And you said he just wants to have fun, which I think is the answer. But Mike is not satisfied right now. So we have to
I think
chalk
it's
this up to
both,
some
though.
number.
Rebecca, I think it's both. I think that he is having fun and he's also good at it. He's getting better and I think he wants it. So for me, it just makes sense.
I think everyone's right here. No one's really wrong. It's not about, pointing, bringing up the SNL database and sorting a column. It's really about having a career post SNL, what that looks like, and having the chance to spread your wings, really, to put it as simple as that. So if that happens in your 21st year, 13th as a cast member, where people are maybe growing tired of Jost and Shay or saying, wow, Jost and Shay have never been hotter, both can be true in the community, and Colin can say, this isn't going to last forever. I'm not going to be a Jimmy or a Seth and take over a late night show. It wouldn't be a bad idea if people can see what else I can bring besides being a partnership with Michael J. That's my take.
How funny would it be if he just started on, he stopped doing update and he just became a full-time sketch member? I think it'd be so funny.
I mean, to me, that's sort of the Tina path. I know that she went off and did 30 Rock, but she came on and then she was doing Sarah Palin for so long that people started to forget that she was an update anchor. So I think that there is precedence for something like this. And he's only 43. I don't know when Jost and Shay will go. I have a feeling that, I think that a lot of the veterans in this cast are tied to Lorne. So whenever Lorne departs, I think that they're gone. And I don't think that Lorne's going anywhere while Trump's still in office. So I think that's a whole other conversation. So for me, I think Jost and Shay will at least carry this through to the next election. But the thing is Jost part of the conglomerate of people that will end up running the show one day? It's certainly possible. So I think it can't hurt for him to continue to raise his profile on the show.
Definitely. Or Tom and Jerry too, in theaters sometime soon. Okay, question number 3, because we did have an episode this week, Colman Domingo and Anitta. The What If I Told You sketch with the human furniture screamed big 10-1 energy, but aired pre-update. John, I'm so glad you mentioned it on the roundtable on Monday. I listened to it today. It was a great show. On a philosophical level, is there a correct position in the show rundown for each segment? If you actually put them all out on the board and said, this is the week, because that's what they do, for the lead up to the show. But is there always a correct answer? Because sometimes hindsight can color our vision of it. And what sketch factors should be considered when determining sketch order other than logistics? I know that this person was in the makeup chair and that set is too big. I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear about sketch comedy, correct position, and what is the factor, John Schneider?
So, Mike, are you familiar with the OCD color theory?
I mean, look at me. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think you are. So essentially, when you look at your spreadsheets, I think that's pretty clear, which is that anyone who has the type of brain that likes to organize things around them to be able to better understand them tends to see things in either patterns or numbers or colors. And to me, that's my brain. And that's, part of why Mike and I connect so much on data is because we were both kind of like that. So I do believe that there is a color or a feeling that you get with certain parts of the show when you start to categorize and break it down and think about how you would produce the show. And I think that sketches bring you that emotion that's hard to, it's hard to verbalize what it is, but maybe you can draw it out. And I think that something, when I was watching the sketch, it had this feeling that reminds me qualitatively of a lot of other sketches that end up at the end of the night. And I described this on Monday as the reason why I felt it should be there, because it was so silly and dumb and people are paying less attention and they just want junk food at the end of the night. So that is the perfect 10-to-1 sketch. But I absolutely think that you should look at the show that way. And maybe it's hard to realize how something fits until you watch the show all the way through. But I would have found a way to put this at the end, because to me it was hilarious in the way that Colman performed it. They could have never known that he was going to flub the way that he did, but just the way that all of the cast members were appearing as furniture, it just felt so delirious in a way that I haven't seen on the show in the last few weeks, that it is living rent free in my head for days.
Yeah, this is the first mention of SNL synesthesia. So if you ever see someone wearing a yellow sneaker, you're like, that's very sharp 11. I think that's Lydian mode. I can
Yes.
hear that raised fourth. Then this is the show for you. But yeah, I think swap it with the prep school sketch. I thought the prep school with Colman as the teacher, really, it was a performance-based sketch that anyone could get, had a good cast participation. And later on the night, if we get the What If I Told You show, with him being kind of solo, kind of muted, and having the elements around him come to life, is a better use of that slot. But to go to Rebecca and kind of ask, like, are there elements that you ever see in a sketch or pre-tape that suggests a time slot to you, or do you not think that way?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're not going to get like diverse opinions here. My brain's a robot. Like everything that I do and succeed in is very formula based, and comedy is formula. You say, okay, 3 beats. That's how you do a good thing. Oh, this is when you do the punchline. This is what feels right. And like comedy itself is a formula, and you go to comedy classes. That's the first thing they tell you is you could do XYZ type. If you do this type of joke, then you do this. This is the formula that you follow. Same goes with TV shows. You think sitcoms. It's you start with kind of the cold open, and you have the final joke at the end, and you have the 2 beats in the middle. And all of these things make sense. And I think an episode of SNL is no different than that, which is why they need to. And a lot of the times, I mean, we were saying like, okay, there are 2 sketches in one episode next to each other where Chloe and Andrew are a couple at a restaurant, and that feels wrong. And if we put 3 sketches in between, we probably wouldn't have commented on it. But since they were back to back, it felt off and felt wrong and stuff like that. And I think having this be early on and not the 10-to-1 felt wrong. And I definitely think I think it makes sense that this would have fit at the end. I kind of think of the 10-to-1 as like the high sketch. It's like right when like your edible like fully hits and you're like, what am I watching? And that's kind of how this was. But there was a 10-to-1 that did feel 10-to-1 also. So maybe that's why they just like had 2 good sketch. Not like I really thought the 10-to-1 was like that great, but they had 2 sketches where they were like, we want to put these both in the episode, and they both would fill in the same spot. So let's just throw this other one before that. And that's like, you don't usually get that many that feel really 10-to-1-ish throughout an episode, which is why this was kind of more jarring to us to be like, this should have been at the end. And I think only Colman could have done that, and they wouldn't have saved this for another week, because I think Colman was so great in it. And that was why. I don't know why the amphibian, whatever that one with the frogs and animals, needed to be in this week. It didn't. It could have been in any episode. So that's the one I would have pushed to a different episode if they were like really dying to do it, and then put this as the 10-to-1.
Well, Rebecca, you had some subtext in there that I think is very vital to this podcast, which I love that you mentioned. Maybe I'm just reading into your words too much, but it's kind of just like why we do this. This is kind of like, I can't put my finger on it, but like there's something going on here. And that's like when I'm watching SNL, and it only exacerbates as I do more of it, and as I get older and I get more crazed, and there's just more lunacy and there's more spreadsheets, is because there's things at play that the human eye doesn't know, but the subconscious does. So you mentioning like Dismukes and Chloe in the same sketch. that I don't know that they're always thinking about it, but I know that sometimes they do. So that's definitely a factor. And when it comes to sketch order, it's all about, I think, fortunately and unfortunately, how it plays a dress. So sometimes we've seen sketches come from the bottom to the top because it killed at dress and then it has kind of bombed at live. And once in a while, I love when John gives us that data on the hot take show, because you say like, oh, that Bad Bunny rap sketch was the 10-1 and it became the first sketch with Mikey Day when Bad Bunny hosted for the first time. Like, I love that. So when I'm looking at the data in hindsight, there's a whole part of my brain being activated, but also when I'm watching it live, noticing these things and thinking about, why is this sketch right here happening? John, you have something to say?
Just that I wish there was a press conference after every episode where we can ask these questions and be like,
Yes.
all right, so why did you put this in this part of the night? Because I think that the decisions to order the show and which sketches to cut is probably the most fascinating part of the process. And it's the part of the process that most of the time we know the least about.
Oh man, imagine Mike Murray and John Sanders' press conferences. We would be insufferable.
Yeah.
Holy
we would
shit.
be like, all right, Beastamorphs, tell us why you thought that would be
Yeah.
good.
Also, Beastamorphs, was that in play for a previous episode?
I keep calling it amphibian. That's what it's called.
I don't believe so. I believe that was not. I think the only thing we had that was no, it was it was actually the knowledge hour, the what if I told you, that was in play for the Gosling episode. That was at the table.
All right. Because
also,
some
I'm
of
just
these
imagining. Oh,
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I was imagining you two, and everyone wants to just go to the after party, and you guys are like, no, but wait, stop and talk to us about the logistics and the structure of this episode, please. And everyone's just like itching to go.
That was back in the short tangent. That was when we were at the after party for Ravi Youssef's episode, Mike, and we were talking to Michael Longfellow and Devin about they had a cut update piece where they're playing Jost and Shay in Another Life, and they were talking to us about it, and we had so many questions about why that didn't make the show and what happened and if they're ever going to try it again, and we just like could not listen to anything else.
Yeah, that was like one of the highlights. I mean, there's a lot of highlights of that night, John, but that was one of the things that we like wanted to know the answers to, because we were tracking the stats, of course, in that season and wanting to see that breakout moments. We love new pairings, and like Longfellow and Devin were classmates in that, season when they came in, and that was just like the moment, and it never saw the light of day. And Devin Walker did mention it on his podcast too, which we're keeping it alive. Hopefully, we're in the archives one day. We can rewatch it, but it did play a dress. So let's go to question 4. Speaking of rundowns, SNL released its latest installment today of their video series, The Rundown, with Bowen Yang, season 51 cast member, as its guest, nominating a weekend update feature as they build a show piece by piece, segment by segment. Bowen ended up picking Stefan, spoiler alert, go watch it if you haven't already, tomorrow, and referenced many iconic others, including, Father Guido Sarducci, Rosanna Dana. So I want to know, just, for fun, Rebecca, what would you pick for your update guest segment as you build an SNL show? And if it's Stefan, that's fair, but, what's your second pick?
This is so hard, but one of my favorites ever is 80 with Michael Che, and she does it a lot where it's like she's on summer vacation and she's just like, Michael, and for some reason that just like sticks with me, and whenever someone says the name Michael, like I think of it, and it would build in the perfect episode because it's not someone that you think of all the time besides me, and it's not like a character that you could dress up for Halloween, is like the kid that's going on vacation.
I saw 2 Carrie Crumbs at my house last year. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, because that's in my mind, and then that kind of makes a perfect update character, because it's like when she comes on, you're like, oh wait, this is exciting, and it's not someone that we would have thought of. If 80 comes back to host, we're not like, wow, we cannot wait to watch her on update play this character. But that's kind of my favorites because they're more of the deep cuts that just like get me and like that get you, and they're not. I don't know, maybe that's just like my SNL elitism that I don't want to pick someone super basic. No offense, Bowen, to your pick, but like that's just who I think of. Just like a strong update character, always is funny and just does a good job, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe you're showing your age a little bit, and I'm gonna show my age just like Rebecca did by picking "Girl at a Party" by Cecily, because it just has such a place in my heart to have that with Michael Che as well, and all the Cecily Strong interplays. You know, I love the characters more than the impressions on Update. So, but I'll be brief. So, John, what about you? What would you pick? Because I was thinking about this and about maybe Stefan is the right answer, and the lore of it, the trajectory, which Bowen covered, which I really liked. Mentioning that Stefan starred in a sketch in the Ben Affleck episode. SNL also posted it on the YouTube page today, right after that, which I thought was a really cool move. So you can kind of see the genesis and the origins of Stefan, because we know him on Updates so well, and it was so prolific. But you know, thinking about Father Guido Sarducci was also a great pick, and it's like so iconic to me about that, like what it means to be an Update guest, especially an original character, and just have that moment. So I'd love to know what your pick would be if you were in Bowen's shoes today.
I would probably go Stefan because I think it's the greatest Update character we've ever had. But just to be, real about my personal preference, it's Will Forte's Tim Calhoun. That is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life, as he is playing a presidential candidate for some random other party, as he cannot get through everything and just going through the cards and is so nervous. So for me, that makes me laugh more than anything else. I think other obvious choices, you got Bobby Moynihan's Drunk Uncle. I think that's a good one. I think Dana Carvey was brilliant at the desk. You could go Grumpy Old Man. There's a lot of
Anthony Crispino as well, as that was in my head too.
Yeah, I think Drunk Uncle probably has the leg up on Anthony Crispino as like the greatest of the greatest. But yeah, I mean, I think, you can go John Lovitz's, Annoying Man or something like that. But I mean, Dana Carvey, for me was so great. Obviously Opera Man, Adam Sandler. There's a lot of like really great ones out there that you can choose from. I just think my personal preference, nothing like Tim Calhoun on Update.
Yeah, we saw 8 Tim Calhouns on Update in SNL history.
The best.
He also appeared once outside that. But I also loved the shout out to Nicholas Fain and Fred Armisen improvising with the newspapers, and that's like one that I love to like live in and like do my own Nicholas Fain sometimes. Like I remember doing that with my friends, because it is like easy to embody but hard to execute the way that Fred Armisen does it. But it's like Garth and Kat, but I think way better. It's really just like Fred Armisen, like completely raw. And that was a great moment, because I don't know if I'd want to see a Nicholas Fain sketch, like a Stefan sketch that he started with, but that was a great shout. So, I thought Bowen did a fantastic job going through those through history, because Update really was a career maker for a lot of people, and it continues to be this day with talking about Jane and Cam in the last 2 seasons. Finally, question number 5. Wow, this is a great show, you guys. You guys are really lucky to listen to this content. Thank you, John, Rebecca. All right. When SNL returns in May, on May 2nd, Olivia Rodrigo will become the 10th first-time host of the season, doubling the number of last season, season 50. I want you to just rank. This is kind of a rapid fire. Shout out John Schneider on the roundtable. We're going to rapid fire. Give me your 9 in order. First-time host of the season. Here is the list chronologically, so no bias, in the 17 episodes, and it will be eventually 10 when Olivia hosts. Sabrina Carpenter, Nikki Glazer, Glenn Powell, Josh O'Connor, Finn Wolfhard, Tiana Taylor, Alexander Skarsgård, Connor Story, and this week, Colman Domingo. Rebecca, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, this is so hard. So I'm just looking at the list and just going with my gut, and I could end up changing this in like 5 minutes, but I'm going to go from best to worst just because that's easier for me. I'm going to look here and say Sabrina number 1. I'm going to say Colman number 2. I'll go Nikki Glazer, Glenn Powell, Connor Story, Tiana, Finn Wolfhard was good, Alexander, and then Josh O'Connor.
All right, fair enough. Thank you for your rapid fire element to that. And I'm gonna go actually before John, because I want to get the drama up for what John Schneider says for the top 9 first timers this season, because it was, I said, double the number, but during like season 46 and 47, we had like in the teens of first timer hosts. I'm gonna go from worst to best just to counter Rebecca. I'm gonna go from 9 to 1. And I'm gonna go Tiana Taylor, Josh O'Connor, Finn Wolfhard, Nikki Glazer, Skarsgård, Connor Story, Sabrina, Glenn Powell, and number 1, I'm gonna go Colman Domingo. What do you think about that, John?
All right, so our list is very similar, yours and mine, Mike. We have two differences. One is that I flip-flopped Glenn Powell and Colman Domingo. I think Colman Domingo has a case, but I think Glenn Powell was the greatest first-time host that we had this season.
So good.
Yeah, so great. I think that he's a shoe-in to return. Just from age, we were going to get him back at some point. So for me, that was just a quick flip there at the top. I also flip-flopped Skarsgård and Story. I think so. My list is Glenn Powell, Colman Domingo, Sabrina Carpenter, Alexander Skarsgård, who Rebecca ranked very low, Connor Story, Nikki Glazer, Finn Wolfhard, Josh O'Connor, Tiana Taylor.
Wow, there's that John and Mike synesthesia, synergy, simpatico energy right there. So yeah, very similar lists. If you have one in the chat, then please let me know. Let's see, let's see what Grape thinks. Connor, Colman, Glenn, Alexander, Sabrina, Josh, Nikki, Finn, Tiana. If anyone else has one, I'll throw up on the
Sabrina's
screen.
too low on that list.
Yeah, we got Victor put one in also, if you want to read his.
All right, Victor, what does he got? Sabrina, Alexander, Glenn Powell, Josh O'Connor, Nikki, Colman, Connor, Finn, and Taylor. So Victor was a lot lower on Colman than I was, but similar around a little bit. Also ranked Skarsgård high. I had Skarsgård at 5, John at 4, Rebecca, I don't know, at 19 or something like that. But
yeah.
I think overall though it's a strong crop, and the data I think does help, because I was trying to measure hosts versus how good the episode was. We've seen strong hosts, weak writing, strong writing, weak hosts in many different seasons. But Glenn Powell and Colman Domingo and Sabrina Carpenter had the highest screen time and the most command of the room, I thought. And they were all super strong in what they were in. Sabrina Carpenter also, performing twice, 2 great performances, but I didn't hold that for or against her. And then, and also just a very different names there, thinking about Nikki Glazer or Finn Wolfhard and Josh O'Connor, who got a shout out in Bowen Yang's final sketch by name. All right, let's move on to our final segment of the night and look at the biggest chart we've seen so far this season on By The Numbers, the 17 episode power rankings. John Schneider, back to you.
All right, we got Ashley still in the lead with a 106.6 after a 117.7 week. Sarah remains in second place as well. Lighter week for her, 38.4, but still at 89.2. James remains in the third spot, 89.1 with an 88.5 week. Colin Jost also in fourth, so our top 5 still the same. 84.8 from Jost overall this week, 110 from week 17. Mikey still averages 82.1 in fifth place with a 75.1 week 17. Here is the movement in the chart. We got Marcelo, who is marginally moved above Chloe and Keenan. So Marcelo is averaging 81.91 after putting up a historic screen time record number in a 193.2 power ranking this week. Moves up just an inch above Chloe at 81.88, who put up a 74.2. So we'll see if that lasts as we head towards the end of the season. Keenan also moved below, down to 8th place here with a 78.1 average and a 57.4 from this week. We got same numbers here from 10 all the way through 13, where Veronica, Jeremy, Jane, and Michael Che all stay in the same slots with a respectively 59.5 for Veronica, 51.9 from Jeremy, 51.6 and 40 for Jane, and 47.2 for Che. Those are their averages after 17 weeks. And then the other movement here is that Tommy moved above Ben this week after he put up a 60.7, now averages 46.5. Ben put up a 43.8, now down to a 46.3. So just a 0.2 difference between our two rookies there. And Cam, despite having a great week, 101.6, his best power ranking week of the season, still remains firmly in last place, 36.0 for the season, but moving the average up, and that could be all the difference he needs to come back and be around for a year or two.
Thank you, John. So there's that last third stat I referenced earlier, and we've seen, what are we going to do about Tommy, Ben, and Cam in this last third? Who's going to sink or swim? We kind of had caveat for Ben Marshall being a writer from season 47 on, shout out to hard seltzer from Kim K episode and Halsey, and all the way till now. So it's like, how do you judge that? But now we're seeing Ben Marshall slip behind Tommy Brennan, who I declared Danger Watch on. I played the siren on the show. Go check it out. And Cam Patterson, who's going to stay in last place, but is having this revival at the end of the year with double, back-to-back updates. But I want to go to Rebecca on these tight races because, as John mentioned earlier, favorite time of the year to look at SNL stats is in the spring. And you think about, there's literally thousands and thousands of data points. Every segment you've appeared in, for how long, where in the show, what type of role, all these data equal out to one number. And yet we see, I'm going to start with Marcelo, him and Chloe separated by a 0.03 after 17 episodes of SNL. So Rebecca, I have to get your take on that first of all.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't think they'll be as tight moving forward. I mean, even just looking at Chloe 74 for week 17 here, it's shocking because even when she's not having her best moment just in the world right now and getting a lot of heat online, and she still has some strong numbers that she's putting up on the board because I think she's such a utility player. But I think after Marcelo's showing last week, then we're going to keep seeing him rise up. So I do think that they'll split the difference there. But it is really so crazy that 17 episodes come on and they're only 0.03 away from each other. And that's just the magic of numbers. But I will say I'm very happy. I do have Tommy in my draft. Shout out to the newsletter if you saw where the cast draft is standing. But I have Sarah and Tommy, and I was getting a little worried. I know Sarah obviously is strong enough that I don't think I would ever come in last place, but Tommy was not doing so great there. And I think if him and Ben were not both on the casts, whichever one was on the cast, they would be a lot higher, if that makes sense. I think they fill the same exact role on the show, and we would be seeing them probably at the top of like the newbie leaderboard down there, like right above or below Jeremy, because I think they serve such a similar purpose in sketches that like you can only have one of them.
Well, let's
Being
how
like a
it those
tall white
numbers
guy.
then, because that's my next question is 46.5 for Tommy Brennan, rising above 46.3 Ben Marshall. So a 0.2, talking about a 0.03 with Marcelo and Chloe after 17 weeks of SNL. There's a 0.2 between two rookies in crunch time. And if Tommy Brennan can get closer to 50, that makes all the difference. I mean, this is an average stat, so it's basically aggregating every episode you've been in into one number. And so if Tommy Brennan can raise that number, he's had in the last three episodes 47.6, then 64.5, 60.7. So he's raised his average 3 weeks in a row, where Ben has lowered his 3 weeks in a row. So Tommy naturally rose to 14, Ben down to 15. So Rebecca, who will finish this this rat race between two rookies? One with a big leg up, you'd think, with Ben.
Yeah, and also the first half of the season, it would have been a no-brainer. I feel like we would have been fairly confident in saying Ben would rise to the top of that rookie kind of portion here. But then we've seen him just kind of like first dip and now kind of just taper off and neutralize, if we're going to put this in a line graph. And Tommy's just on the rise. And interestingly enough, I think that they would really use his musical ability. We know that he sings, him and Veronica, at the beginning of the show. And we're not really seeing him fill that kind of musical void that I think this cast, if you look at them right now, there aren't many musicians. And I say musicians in the way of like Cecily, people that are really strong singers. We know Veronica's a really, really good singer, and we're not even seeing her utilized that much. I think she's at the top of that rookie ranking in 10 just purely because she's a woman, and this is a super male dominated cast. So like, yes, we saw her numbers this week were not amazing, but she's always naturally going to probably be above the others just in terms of averages because it's such a male heavy cast. But it's shocking that Tommy is having this kind of surge, and I don't even think we're playing into his abilities yet. So it's not like a Jane scenario where they're finally getting him and they're writing for him. It just kind of we're just seeing him more, which I think is really interesting. And I don't know maybe people just really grew to like him and they just want to put him in their sketches, because it's not like he's doing such a standout job from like a writing perspective that he would take this spot, but like maybe people just kind of like him and vibe with him and just put him in as like that straight male in the back of an episode, or I don't know.
Right. Let's talk about Tommy real quick because this is very apples to oranges. But when head coaches of sports teams get fired, they often use the phrase "they lost the room," meaning like the locker room is not responding to their messaging, and it's time to go so we can make the team better. So with Tommy Brennan, he basically was slumping from before the Ariana Bowen send off until like 2 weeks ago. So that's why Danger Watch came into play. And now this is 2 weeks. He had one super long sketch, the ice skating sketch with Veronica, with Connor Story, which was one of the longest appearances of the year. Him and Veronica. He had one appearance that night, and it boosted his number because it was a great appearance for him as a lead role. And now it was like, okay, Tommy Brennan is like really Brooks Wheelaning himself right now. And then you have 2 weeks where it's like, yeah, maybe no standouts I'm seeing in the chat, but it's usage at a crucial time. Ben tapering off. So I want to go to John, and I want to just add one more thought at the power ranking because, if you could see me and John's texts to the week, it's always fun to what's brewing. And we did a Dismukes segment recently, and Dismukes had, as I predicted, a great Jack Black week. He had one of his best weeks of his career last season with Jack Black in the same weekend. He followed through this week, and now he had 2 lead sketches. He wasn't in the host role, but the What If I Told You playing the vase / would-be lover of Colman Domingo, and then as like the lead student in the prep school sketch. So he had some good moments, but a lower number that did lower his power ranking. So I love for John to weigh in on the Tommy Ben discourse and Dismukes now being at 9, while Marcelo is just like shooting up the board.
So with Andrew, I worry that this is, I've been thinking about this a lot the last few weeks. I wonder if this is a season 35 Will Forte thing where he sort of feels like he's done everything he could do on the show. Keep in mind, he was a writer before he was a cast member, so he's been there a long time. And I just wonder if he's, put his voice on the show. He's done a bunch of sketches and is kind of fading out in his own way. Not that he would ever be let go, but that maybe he's ready to move on, because if he's not, then this is weird. So that's something I'm sure we'll talk about as we get to the postseason. But still, I was happy to see him in this episode. It made the episode way better for me just to get his voice in there a little bit more. So when it comes to our 2 races, here's my take. One is I think Marcelo is going to keep going up to the board for the rest of the season. I think he's going to pass Mikey, and he's going to end up in that 5 slot before the end of the season. So because he's had such a great second half of the year post Bowen. So I think that's where he'll go. I think with Chloe, because there were only 5 women to start off the season and they didn't really know how to use Jane, I feel that she had this huge leg up at the start of the season to get things going and had, momentum like we've never seen before. And now I feel like she's reverted back to the mean. She's gone back to her career averages of just popping up every now and then in the episode and, just being like kind of an average sketch performer, which is great. So this is where I think she's going to end up, somewhere in that 7, 8, 9 range, probably more like 7, 8 towards the end of the season. So that's my prediction before we get together again in May. And then to use, I know Rebecca's a Big Brother fan. To use a Big Brother analogy, I feel like Tommy, Ben, and Cam are on the block right now. I feel like 2 of the 3 will not be on the cast next season. I don't know which 2 of 3, but I think that one of them will be there. 2 will not. We'll see.
Yeah.
That's for all the reality TV fans out there. And I love these kind of stats because it really makes me realize just how crazy I am, John. Because and I did put this in my late night article, is that Marcelo is a spring player. Like we talk about that in sports with like in a football season, if like they like heat up before the playoffs or they cool off, where Marcelo's had his 5 best career episodes all occurred in episodes in March or later. So maybe it just takes some time for Marcelo to like heat up and bring it, because I fully agree with your take that Marcelo will be in the top 5 and he will be a through line of the By the Numbers season, which is why is Marcelo Hernandez not in the top 5 after the 50th?
Maybe he has a seasonal depression disorder, where he only does well in like warm weather. Like people have that. We got to get him one of those lights to like
He is from
help his
Florida.
energy in the winter.
So is
Like
Cam. So
That was me.
kind of
I was
adds
like,
up, you know?
yeah, well, that's another
Yeah.
metric is geographic origin to power ranking slant because yeah, Cam and Marcelo, both Floridians who are heating up as the sun comes out. So we'll see if that continues. I want to thank latenighter.com for being our presenting partner. I want to thank Rebecca North for braving heat of her own in her apartment right now in New York City and being with us. So Rebecca, anything to say to listeners? This is the last time I see you this week, this season, I should say. Thank you for bringing the haiku. Thank you for bringing the hot takes.
Always.
And as always, thank you for just diving the numbers with us. So appreciate it.
Always. This is fun. I actually have not done, and this might be an incorrect stat. I don't think I've done a stat show with you, John, since SNL Stats. So this was fun to be on here with you and get two experts, and as opposed to just getting Mike's like expert take on this and just my opinion. So this is fun and a really good episode. So thanks for having me, Mike.
Absolutely, yeah. We're hitting the 2-hour mark, but I don't think we lost any gas. So I've had a lot of fun tonight with Rebecca and John, and appreciate you, Rebecca, as always. John Schneider, so much going on right now. What can the listeners look forward to?
So much happening here on the SNN. So on Patreon right now, we have available our 20 Years Later podcast, looking back at Lindsay Lohan and Pearl Jam's episode from 2006. That's her third time hosting the show. So that is available now for patrons and should be up on YouTube for anyone for our paid podcast feed. So you can check that one out. Tomorrow night here on the channel, we're going to premiere a conversation with Morgan Neville. I know that there's a lot out there now about the Lorne documentary. We got about an hour with Morgan Neville to talk about how it worked with filming the doc and everything that's gone into working with Lorne. A lot of great questions and answers that we had with him. Really, really pleased with that interview. So that will be available tomorrow. And then on Monday, we will have our next episode of SNL Stories, where I'm very excited to announce that we spoke to one member of the Lonely Island. Yorma Taccone joined us on the podcast. So we got to talk to Yorma, and that conversation will be available on Monday night streaming for all of you. So as you know, if anybody knows me, knows how much I love the Lonely Island, it was an absolute dream to talk to Yorma. So very excited for that one.
Give us a little tease, John. Can't wait to hear it.
I was there with Sammy. We talked a little bit about our bar mitzvah themes with him and some of our favorite digital shorts. Asked him some questions that I've always wanted to know. It was really exciting to get to talk to him. Honestly, we were just kind of like fanboying out. Like I try and stay pretty stoic, but I couldn't help it.
Did you talk about Hot Rod at all?
It came up. I had some questions about I had some Forte questions, Hot Rod, and then he started getting into things. There was one point where he kept telling stories and he was like, let me know if you want to stop me. And we're like, no, keep going. It's great. So I didn't care if he answered my questions before I asked them. So I was very excited to talk to Yorma. He'll be with us on Monday, and he has a new film out, Over Your Dead Body. So that'll be, I think, out next week with Jason Segel. And you could definitely go check that one out. So you'll hear about that a little bit in the interview as well. We will then be back for an episode of SNL UK on Saturday night, the 25th, with Nicola Coughlan and Foo Fighters. So coverage of that one. And the following week, we will have our feedback show. So format later in the week for all of our patrons to sign up on that. If you want to join us on the show, patreon.com/SNL Network, and register for a spot on our feedback show. And then our next episode of By the Numbers, I'll be in the hosting chair one more time this season, doing my best to imitate Mike. And I will talk to two great guests about UK By the Numbers that week before we are back for 3 straight weeks of double header coverage. And then we'll head towards our postseason, where Mike and I will be doing some very long nights going through every single cast member season and talking about their legacy.
Definitely. So much to look forward to. Quick story about Hot Rod. My wife and I were vacationing in Portland, Maine. As a Bostonian, it's an easy little trip. Went to the High Roller Lobster Company, one of the best lobster rolls you can get in the world. And we were at the bar, got some lobster rolls, and they had Hot Rod just starting on the TV. Said to my wife, this is kind of a weird move, but I support it that they're just putting Hot Rod on at the bar. We stayed. I got a second lobster roll because I'm like, well, we're already halfway through the movie. It's
gotta watch Hot Rod.
So I'm so glad you interviewed him and can't wait to hear it. This has been a blast. So can't wait to be back with you talking about Olivia Rodrigo in a couple weeks. But in the meantime, so much to look forward to in the SNN. So for John Schneider, Rebecca North, I am Mike Murray of the SNN, and we will see you next time, everybody.